Dr. Coles, you recommend getting off of prescription medications, psychotropic drugs. Are there studies that prove these dangers?
You mean the dangers of the withdrawal or the dangers of the drugs?
Taking the drugs,
Yeah.
like the Prozac effect.
Oh, there's lots and lots of studies that aren't well known in the medical or psychiatric literature,
Oh,
however.
really?
This is in alternative literature done by good scientists, but not popular with the medical journals, which are funded, heavily funded by the drug industry. So,
Right.
you know, the old saw, whoever pays the piper calls the tune. You know, whoever
All right.
it applies in medical journals. If there's lots of advertising from drug industries in a journal, you can tell that they are at least subtly, maybe overtly, influencing what gets published. One of the best books that I know that should have got a Pulitzer Prize is a book called Mad in America by Robert Whitaker. The subtitle is Bad Science, Bad Medicine, and the Enduring Mistreatment of the Mentally Ill. And in there, it talks about, as one example of the dangers of the drugs, in third world countries where drugs are not available and they're unaffordable. So when someone has a psychotic episode, which any of us are subject to, you can be sleep deprived or abused or solitary confinement or some crazy making situation where you can go psychotic temporarily.
Okay.
In third world countries, the family just takes care of them. They get them good food and they get them sleep and et cetera, and they don't start them on drugs.
It's a community.
It's a community, yeah. And those people, in large percentages, never have another trouble the rest of their life. It was a temporary psychotic episode. They are nurtured and they get over it. In first world countries like America, the first thing that happens with a psychotic episode is you go to a mental institution, you get on drugs right away, and you're told you have a brain chemical disorder, probably genetic, probably inherited it, and you have it, now you're going to have it the rest of your life, and you need to be on drugs the rest of your life. Hardly any of those ever get better. So the drugs make permanent the problem. And now, when you're on an antipsychotic drug, such as Thorazine in the old days, and then Haldol, and now Risperdal, or Zyprexa, or Clozaril, all those, now you have this brain-altered situation, and you're sort of like a zombie because of the meds, and now you act like you're schizophrenic, which just sort of confirms to the industry that, oh, it was schizophrenia, and now we know for sure, but it's the drug effect that's now making you appear mentally ill. And when if you can't get off that stuff, and there's a lot of withdrawal symptoms after you've been on these meds for a length of time, that your brain gets dependent on them, and when you try to go off, you have adverse effects again of insomnia or mania, or oftentimes serious problems that make you appear worse, mentally ill, have to go back on the meds, and then down that road to disability. So, whereas in third world countries that don't have drugs, these people may have one episode and now they're cured. In first world countries, you get on the drugs from the very first, and hardly any of those ever gets cured. So the drugs are making permanent abnormalities that are just detrimental. And that's a wonderful point that Robert Whitaker makes. One of the best drugs books is a book called Toxic Psychiatry by Peter Breggin. He's a psychiatrist that wrote this book 15 years ago or more. It's a classic. And the subtitle is Why Therapy, Psychotherapy, Counseling, Empathy, caring for other people's suffering, and love must replace the drugs, the electroshock, and the biochemical theories of the new psychiatry. Peter Breggin has many other books, including this one called Your Drug May Be Your Problem. And in there he talks about how important it is to try to go slowly in tapering off the medication.
Right, how and why to stop taking psychiatric medications.
Right, how and why, right. So these are all...
And they are based on studies?
Oh yeah, there's a lot of studies. The bibliographies are vast in there. And Prozac backlash, of course, is more specifically on the SSRI drugs, and a lot of interesting studies there that if you read this thoroughly, you'll say, why would anyone want to take that stuff? These are the overcoming the dangers of Prozac, Zoloft, Paxil, and other antidepressants with safe, effective alternatives. Joseph Glenn Mullen, Harvard psychiatrist.
It's a sad state of affairs, isn't it?
It sure is. Yeah, I mean, it's a real crisis. People are on inadequate information willing to take a medication that could be dangerous, maybe brain damaging. There's evidence in all of those books about the brain damaging effects long term that we have proved in the animal labs. I have a study, well, I have a number of studies that in the animal labs that shows changes in the brain cells, the nerve cells, with medication effect. And does that extrapolate into humans? You better believe it. But it isn't studied in humans because you don't do brain biopsies in humans. So we're just keeping our fingers crossed that, well, what's happening in the animal labs isn't happening in humans. But we shouldn't trust that because the brain cells of animals are identical to the brain cells of humans.
Thank you, Dr. Coles.
You're welcome.